Everything you need to know to prepare for your next parasail. And yes, we are talking about sharks. We are talking about dangers, weather, my experiences, and everything in between. So in this video, I will be reviewing 2 case studies of both true events that have transpired involving a case study, as well as my own experiences and what you need to know. So what is parasail? So if you have not seen it, or you have planned a trip but you don't know the nitty-gritty, here's the deal. So a parasail, of course, you're gonna go out. You should be, of course, in a vest. You will be harnessed. You'll go out on a boat, and from that boat you will be tethered to a line that ultimately has a parasail, which is a nice oversized umbrella, if you will, and that catches the wind, and between the two you are able to sail. That is the piece of it. Now, with it, though it seems very, very simple, there are some complexities and other issues that can come about. So, first case study here, we have 3 women who were traveling in Florida and going on their parasail. When it came down to tap into the dip, they saw sharks in the water. Now, here I will add in some images just so I could give you, a better synopsis, just so I could give you a better idea of how the situation came about. But they came in, they went out on the line was released, parasail was up, they were flying for a bit, and they were not concerned. However, as they came down closer to the water and were being wheeled in, they did start to spot a number of sharks in the water. So, depending on where the boat is in the parasail, that line could be out 100 feet, 150 feet. So the communication is not exactly existent. So that's part one. The other thing is, once you're kind of out there, it's you're pretty much relying on the communication and the conversation that you had on the ground to have a better understanding of what's supposed to be happening while you're up in the parasail. So here's what you do. When you come in, and this is the same thing that I did for myself and my brother and also my mother, who came out with us for the parasailing during our time in Hawaii. So in my time of parasailing, we came and said, hey, we want to go. We went to first a reputable company. Now, when you're going for a reputable company, you definitely want to check out and look up the reviews. The reviews on there, you want to see how long they've been in business, what their situation is. Do they actually have like a workspace, a headquarters, like a business address space? Those things kind of matter because where people are set up as far as companies, that's where most, travelers are going to go and also feel comfortable going. Now, here's what I will tell you. There are a lot of individuals, especially as you travel, that will go and do their own thing independent. And those can kind of get a little dicey. Now, whether the individual who was operating this particular boat for these, 3 women, in this particular situation, it seemed to be more of a, an aquatic life marine, marine situation versus, an error on the operation of the captain of the boat. But that can happen. So that is something to be mindful of. But I am going to show you what potentially could have maybe changed the dynamic a bit. So you go in, you say, hey, I want a parasail. You guys discuss the process. Now, typically they say most people can parasail, so as long as you can be in like a seated position, you can stand. When they wheel you back in the boat, you can parasail. So I remember they had people as young as like 6 parasailing and as old as I want to say 90 something parasailing, and all had no issue. So that was that piece. Follow-up part, decide where you want to be. So when we decided to go out, my brother and I decided, of course, hey, we wanted to be up in the parasail, so that's where we were. But my mother decided that, hey, I want to stay in the boat. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if you do have family members that are traveling with you but are not comfortable necessarily going up in the parasail, there is an option where you can go and kind of enjoy the boat ride while they're, your family members or other friends are in the parasail. And there is nothing wrong with that. So that is part 2. Now, keep in mind, check and see what kind of licenses they have. So there are a few different things to consider. Many come offering the parasail where they say, okay, we could take out 6 people or less, likely have a 6-pack license. That is the 6 paying customers or less that they can take out per instance. So they get the people together. This is the, excursion, if you will. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom, they're paying customers. That's that. Now, if there are 7 people or more, or more than the 6, need a master captain license. That is for the individual to be able to operate that tour of X number of people. So that is that. Now, the reason I bring the licensure kind of piece into it is because if you are designating that you're going to use or do parasailing for recreational use, you do not need to be licensed. And that's where things kind of get a little scary, and you don't necessarily know what's what, or you don't know what you don't know. And in the situation of case study 2 that we're going to discuss momentarily, I think that maybe could have been a factor, but you never know. So for recreational use, if that's something where you're saying, quote, you should not have paying customers, you don't need any further, training or anything else as per what, I've done and reviewed and researched. So it is something that you can go, purchase the equipment, purchase the tools, parasailing, and in some places that people kind of lure you off to the side, lure you to other areas that aren't necessarily kind of like in the heart of where the destination is. Usually they're going to say, hey, this, company is doing parasailing for $100 a person. I'll do it for $50. And a lot of people will go with that to save a few dollars. But to be honest, the cost of what can potentially happen, in my opinion, is not worth it. So the women here did decide to move forward, and then they were, of course, going in to do the dip and what they saw to be with sharks. And that is kind of what you see here. Now, when I mentioned coming in at the beginning and discussing who's going to be where, you also discuss on the parasail whether you want to come in contact with the water. Quote, either you'll hear the dip. Now, you do have the option when you start off in the parasail, you start off in the boat, they can release you into the air, and when it's time, you will come back directly to the boat. That is an option. And that is the option that my brother and I decided to do on our trip parasailing while we were parasailing in Hawaii. Now, we did discuss the dip, we discussed what that would look like, and we discussed, approximately how many dips would be occurring. And doing that, we said, hey, we're not going to do the dip, we're not comfortable with it. So if you're concerned with the shark piece or just other marine life coming about during your time during the dip while you're parasailing, don't do the dip. That is optional. That is something that they control in the boat, and that is something that you can avoid altogether. So that is that piece. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention while parasailing, or anytime you're doing any water sport, you will discuss a variety of signals. And I think that's probably the biggest piece that was missing. So remember at the beginning, I said, hey, the line goes out. Sometimes it's 100 feet, 150 feet, maybe more. That's something they should tell you at the beginning. So even though the women were screaming in the boat, they perhaps weren't able to hear them or to hear that there were other issues or concerns going on. So during your time, you will discuss signals. I know an example we had, hey, for like shark, 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 whatever the signal was that we discussed, or, issue. That is an issue. So if there was something where, hey, there's an issue, there's an issue. There's an issue. Whatever the signal was, there were a variety of signals that we discussed for different things. And then that was their signal to know that, oh, that's the sign, that's the signal, there's an issue, they need help. Something else needs to be going on, there's an issue, right? So I didn't see that. When I seen the video, and again, both of the case studies are easily Googleable due to the sensitivity and nature of the video, especially for the second scenario. I'm not going to mention names or anything of that nature, but like I mentioned, both are Googleable. I will try to throw in the social media channel that I did see the first case study on, just so you could definitely go over and check it out for yourself. But definitely in going through and seeing it, the women were frightened. The women were frightened just like anybody else and would be concerned. And I think being able to, display or see perhaps that signal is something that those individuals on the boat will be able to say, hey, let's move about and do something a little differently. So that is that piece. Now, scenario 2. Scenario 2 taps into inclement weather. And I have had a few excursions and or tours change due to inclement weather. And parasailing or other water sports is usually at the top of the list. And that is because bad things usually tend to happen in inclement weather. And of course, where there's storms or hurricanes or other, other events, weather-related events going on. It's just not safe. So it's one of those things, it's just not worth it. Yes, you're out on vacation. Yes, maybe you're only there for a week. So you do want to be able to, explore and use your time wisely and be able to get all those experiences in. But sometimes it's just one of those things where you say, you know what, maybe that can happen on the next trip. And this is one of those scenarios. So scenario or case study 2. Family goes out, husband and wife, son, and nephew. So that is that 4 people. Husband decides to stay on the boat. Remember I mentioned at the beginning, like my mother did, she said, hey, I'm not going in the Parasail, I'm staying in the boat. Stays in the boat for the Parasail. Wife goes out on the Parasail, 3 people, wife, son, and nephew. Okay, so 3 people go out on the Parasail. And in seeing the video before the Parasail even started, I said, what are they doing? It's inclement weather. So this is one of those pieces where I said, hey, do your research and check in, look at the viability of the company, see what's what ahead of time before going. Because a lot of people go out, try, different things here, or maybe perhaps it was a better rate, not sure. But strange things tend to happen. So Parasail's going up, going up, going up, and the wind becomes the weather, I guess, and heightens up and increases a bit as explained in the review. And the captain decided to cut the line to the Parasail. Now, cutting the line to the Parasail is definitely not what I expected in any stretch of the imagination to happen moving forward in reviewing this case study. That wasn't even on the dome. I don't know where cutting the line came from. I guess the issue that was presented from the husband in the review was that the captain had concern because the Parasail was taking the boat. The Parasail, the wind had picked up, the Parasail was taking the boat, and the captain could no longer control the boat. Now, captain cuts the line, Parasail blows for a period of, X number of feet, and the Parasail and the occupants on the Parasail end up hitting into a bridge, and the wife was killed instantly. The son and the nephew did suffer, a variety of injuries, but they did survive. However, the woman or the wife did not. So that is one of those things. Of course, charges were filed with the captain there, and I'm sure they're tapping into the credentials. Remember, I was talking about that 6-pack, that master license, right? That are tapping into credentials and trying to see what's what. But unfortunately, it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. And you definitely want to go through, move forward, and do your due diligence and do your research. Definitely let me know in the comment section below what you have encountered via whether it was a parasailing issue or if you had something other aquatic life issue. I do know during my time in Hawaii, we did go jet skiing. I wasn't sure what I was encountering. But it was big. It was big, and I definitely had some concerns with it. I started doing the signal, and come to find out that they were family of dolphins. they were really big dolphins. From the side profile, they kind of smile and they look happy. But hey. So let me know in the comments if you've had some encounter with wildlife during an excursion, what your encounter was, and also any tips that you have, anything that you feel that you would have done differently, having experience, whether it be a parasail, a jet ski, paddle boarding, or some other water event on your vacation or other travels. And I will see you folks on the next one. Bye.